ପ୍ରତି ପିଲା 53 ହେଇଛନ୍ତି ଯେ 4:21 ହେଲାଣି କହିଛୁ ତ? ସବୁଆଡେ ସାଙ୍ଗେ ସାଙ୍ଗେ ସବୁଆଡକୁ ଲଗେଇଦେ ଲୋକ। So, good afternoon to all of you. Hopefully, I am audible. I am Professor Nachieketa Sharma, Director, University Outreach Programs, and the coordinator of this prestigious Siksha and Anusandhan fortnightly academic lecture. So, today we have gathered for the beginning of the Soafal 3 series. So, today is the inaugural oration of the Soafal 3 series or overall 51st Soafal oration. We are privileged to have amongst us one of the prolific speaker, Professor Dr. Vijay Sakhua. So I have the privilege of introducing him to the audience, and also I will present a synopsis of his talk today. So Professor Dr. Vijay Sakhua is a former Indian Navy officer and served for over 2 decades in various ranks and positions. He has held positions of Director, National Maritime Foundation, New Delhi, Director of School of Integrated Coastal and Maritime Security Studies at Rashtriya Raksha University, an institution of national importance, and Director Research Indian Council of World Affairs, New Delhi. Dr. Sakhua has also been on the faculty of a number of think tanks and universities in India and overseas. Dr. Sakhua specializes in Indo-Pacific affairs, maritime and coastal security legal issues, blue economy, Arctic politico-strategic dynamics, fourth industrial revolution technologies, and maritime energy transition. He has published over 50 books, edited volumes, and monographs. Here, I do like to appreciate the efforts of Professor Dr. Vijay Sakhua in conceptualizing this annual theme of integrated maritime studies, under which we are going to present 25 lectures. All will be related to integrated maritime studies. So now I am just presenting a brief synopsis of his talk, Blue Economy and Industry 4.0 Technologies. Nearly 70% of Earth's surface is covered by water, and the oceans and seas hold over 90% of this space. These large bodies of water are endowed with bountiful of living and non-living resources and offer numerous commercial uses like shipping, ports, supply chains, tourism, and environmental ecological services like climate regulation, production of oxygen, carbon sink, etc. Furthermore, over 40% of the world population, nearly 3.1 billion people, live within 100 kilometers of the sea. The asset value of the oceans is pegged at nearly $24 trillion and has engendered the use of term blue economy. Some countries have even appointed ministers for blue economy, and blue bonds are turning into attractive financial instrument options for states to finance blue economy. It is thus not surprising that blue economy finds reference and relevance in international relations, economic growth assessments, environment and ecological debates and development discourses. There is a symbiotic relationship between the sea and technology and is marked by various maritime industrial revolutions. It is now transitioning to the fourth industrial revolution, and several marine, maritime, and naval related industries and businesses consider these as critical for the development of the blue economy. India's Maritime Vision Document 2030 is a 10-year blueprint for the country's vision of a sustainable maritime sector. Blue economy is currently assessed at nearly 4% of India's GDP, and the government aims to increase its share in national GDP to double digits by 2047. We are really privileged to have you, sir, amongst us. So before the floor belongs to Professor Sakhua, I will request our Vice Chancellor, Professor Vijay Kumar Sahu, to kindly address the audience. Sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. So a very good afternoon to one and all. First of all, let me welcome Professor Dr. Vijay Sakhua, former Indian Navy officer and director, National Maritime Foundation, for his nice topic to be discussed today on blue economy and industry 4.0 technology. So, Dr. Sakhua, actually, let me tell just a few minutes with regards to my university. My university, Siksha, Anusandhan, deemed to be university. It has got the NIRF India ranking 2022 with 16th best university, 18th best medical institution, 27th best engineering institution, 10th best dental institution, and 9th best law institution. And it has been accredited by various institutes like AICT, ICR, ABET, UGC, and all these categories. And presently, we have 10 different institutes starting from engineering and till agriculture, then medical and veterinary, everything. So it's a very nice institution, and we have a student faculty ratio of 9.5 is to 1. At present, we are having around 14,000 students and 5,000 odd faculties and also many more. Our medical is having it's a very good medical in the best in the Eastern zone. So with this briefing and with regards to this Soafal, this is the third series of the Soafal oration, and this is overall we are in the 51st Soafal oration. So I welcome Dr. Sakuja to this August gathering. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your kind um, introduction of the speaker and about our university. Now, I will request today's speaker, Professor Dr. Vijay Sakhua, to kindly give the 51st overall Soafal oration or the inaugural Soafal 3 oration. Sir. Yes, Professor Sakhua. Um, Professor Sakhua, are you there?
Yes,
Hello.
I am there. Now I've
Yes.
got the audio rights, the video rights, and the presentation rights are yet to be given to me. Thank you,
Yes.
Honorable Vice Chancellor. It's always a pleasure and an honor to contribute to the academic discourse of the universities. I think they are the institutions where we get to hear a lot, learn a lot, and contribute a lot. After all, we are all committed to the growth and development, academic growth and development of the next generation. Thank you very much, Professor. And I feel honored and privileged and also feel very happy that you've chosen to include maritime into your curriculum. Maritime studies is a very, very promising subject, and we hope to contribute to it in whatever way I can. Thank you very much for this. I need presentation rights, please.
Yes. Rasekar and Sib, please give the presentation right to the speaker so that he can present from his side. Please allow him to present. Are you able to present now?
No, not yet.
Just wait. Just wait. Give me 1 or 2 minutes. Now they have given you. Please try.
No. Now he's come.
Have you sent the PPT to me?
No. There is a problem, I guess.
Let me check from there. Just wait. Just wait, sir. Just wait. This connectivity sometimes Yesterday it works very fine. So let me check. Sir, they have given you the right presentation. Your voice is not audible. Your voice is not audible.
Now
it is clear. Now the voice is clear. Now
but
you
I'm unable to
start presentation. If it doesn't work, then mail me. I will present it from this side. You just try once more. बसो तुम्हें did you try? Yes. Now it's coming. Now it's coming, but you are muted. You are muted. Please unmute.
okay.
Yes, it's okay.
Now can you
Now
see?
you just make the full screen and everything will be okay. Yes, it's okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Sorry for this technical glitch, and it does happen, and we have to be very patient with it. So it's a pleasure, as I said, to be participating in this oration. And I've chosen this very interesting subject called Harnessing Blue Economy Through Industry 4.0 Technologies. Now, the keywords are here harnessing. That means we're going to extract something out of it. And where from? From the oceans and seas, what we are now going to be referring to as blue economy. And so, how do we go about doing it? There are ways of physically doing it, or we're going to marshal in certain amount of technologies and contemporary technologies, such as Industry 4.0. So that's why this whole construct of harnessing blue economy through Industry 4.0. Well, having said that, where does this term come from, blue economy? I mean, it's something new, or it's been there, or something that we probably are going to be futuristically looking at. Well, the word blue economy first came from this gentleman called Gunter Pauli. He wrote this book, and his book was Blue Economy, 10, 100 million jobs. He was talking about 100 innovations and 10 tasks. Now, if you really look at it, he was actually more keen on net emissions, which we are these days is the contemporary discourse of zero emissions, as we call it. He had a dream. He wanted to shift from identifying the problems to finding solutions. So 10 years, and if we were to look at it, he wrote about it sometimes in 2020, 2011, 2012, and 10 years later, we are looking at his book, 10 years, 100 innovations, and 100 million jobs. And if we were to now transcribe the whole thing into the construct of blue economy, as we understand it today, which I'll share with you, the new definition or the revised, or as the definition is understood in contemporary times, We have reached it's more than 100 million jobs, and we shall see that. Now, the word blue economy was actually in the context of, as I said, net zero, finding solutions, etc., etc. But then blue economy was also resonating amongst at the multilateral forum. In 2012, the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development in Rio de Janeiro, also called the Rio 20, they advanced a concept of green economy, which was very logical. They wanted to green the economy because of the carbon footprint. And today, carbon footprint is a very, very big thing. Carbon decarbonization is a big, big issue that we are talking about. So the word green economy or the coinage called the green economy was talked about, and they said if we want to have sustainable development and we want to do poverty eradication, or we were to really invest in sustainable development goals 2030, we needed to green ourselves. And even now we are talking about greening ourselves. We are talking about green fuels. We're talking about green. In fact, we have started coloring the economy or giving geographic. We also have concepts like mountain economy. We have concepts called river economy. And of course, we didn't use the word ocean economy because we didn't want to limit it to just the oceans and seas. We want to take the entire span or expanse of water. As we said, literally the earth is made up of water, a large proportion. Even the water bodies, they generate a certain amount of revenue. You are in Bhubaneswar, you are in Odisha, Chilka Lake itself is an example of blue economy. So they wanted to have a wider definition. So they wanted to give blue economy. And why this blue economy came up was because when the island states, small island states, felt that where are we? We have hardly any land to talk about. So what about green for us? They were so limited. For them, island states questioned the relevance of green economy. And they said the world's ocean seas require more in-depth attention and coordinated action. So they set up, the UN set up an expert group. They said that we'll go about a UN 5-year action agenda 2012-2016 and to provide us the requisite prominence of the oceans and seas in the whole construct of a global economy. And there they produced a blue economy concept paper. So it was very justified. Small island state, 70% of the earth is water body. And then why we are not talking about greening the entire economy? Why not the blue economy? All these debates went on, and finally today we have what we call as the blue economy. Now it's always important to define because that helps us to understand where we fit in, what we are talking about, where will all this so-called fiscal resources will come, where technology will go, where you and I, like in terms of innovation, the whole food, the wealth, the financial capital, the legal. We always tend to forget the legal, and above all, where would that jobs come? What Kuntrapali talked about. So let us coin this definition called blue economy is the integration of water-based economy, including inland water bodies. I gave you an example of Chilka Lake and ocean economy development with the principles. Ladies and gentlemen, the crux is the principles of social inclusion, environmental sustainability, and technologically innovative and dynamic business models. Now, that is where heart and soul of blue economy lies. With that as the basic definition, what does it all comprise of? I've just given you a sampling of just a few of these. Carbon sequestration, can we call it a services being provided by the ocean and seas? And if you turn to the right, if you look at oil, gas, and minerals, we can talk about goods. So if you put them together in terms of goods and services, you'll find there are essential areas, aquaculture, agriculture, right? We're talking about trade, shipping, transport, tourism. After all, you go to the Gariyamata beach where we have the turtles being preserved, or you go to the Puri beach and you have leisure industry, and we are talking about, also a naval base in Chilka, INS Chilka. We are talking about safety. We are talking about security. Not to forget, we're also talking about the whole issue how blue economy will be impacted by issues such as cyclones, storms, surges, etc., etc. So blue economy is not just few these sectors that I've listed. Today, if you're creative, innovative, you'll put out as many sectors as possible. And each of these sectors has multiple
Professor Sakuja, sometimes
of sectors involved in it.
sometimes your voice is breaking due to probably the connectivity problem. Sometimes.
Okay, I'll slow down.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So if we were to look at, let's say, right in the middle, on the left hand side, I have written marine renewable energy. Now, marine renewable energy, we're talking about offshore energy, we're talking about wind farms, we're talking about offshore wind farms or offshore solar farms. If you turn to the right, sea salt production, after all, basic, go back, Gandhi's March, Dandi March, and all that, all those issues. So you have goods, you have services coming out of blue economy. Some you see them, they are visible, you understand them, all right. Some you may not, like carbon sequestration, carbon sink, mangrove forests. Variety of these things are now encompassed in the blue economy. Let's start with very interesting subject called shipbuilding, shipping, and ports. Now, if you look at it, I've got a figure coming from the 1850s. That is almost 170, 75 years we are talking about. And if you see, if you turn to the last tablet on the right hand side at the bottom, 1950s to 2022, we have an annual growth rate of 3.2%. Go a little earlier, 1850 to the whole decade or century, 3.2%. You notice that the sea trade has grown. That means it's an important component of the blue economy. And it is something we start with steamships. We are going now into an era of autonomous ship, which we'll discuss a little later. So you notice that the sea is an important part, is also providing us great services. It is giving, this is a service. Then there is ancillary industry, which provides us shipbuilding. Then there are ports, which are infrastructure intensive, and they provide us in terms of services being provided. So any sector that you take is a combination of goods and services. I mentioned to you about solar technology, going to the sea. Now we have good examples. You see the picture on top. Belgium partners use new offshore floating photovoltaic to complement wind. We'll talk about the wind a little later. Look at the Tata Power Solar Commissions, India's largest floating solar power project of 101.6 megawatts in Kerala backwaters. Now you can see how we are moving from land. Land we can continue to occupy in terms of solar farm. Now we are moving towards the sea. Let us look at offshore wind. Global offshore wind power market 2019, little lower, 24 billion, and we are going to be talking about just about 7 years later, 75 billion. Now, this is the kind of phenomenal growth that blue economy is going to witness. This is the kind of market that it is going to be. And this is, after all, there's a growth, there's a market. After all, this has to be built on demand. And you can well imagine, we're all talking about harnessing renewable energy. In India, we all know, we are familiar with it, that we are leading the International Solar Alliance. Right now, talks are on whether we can go really talking about a global grid. After all, Mr. Modi talks about one world, one earth, one grid, one future. Now, if one grid, when we are talking about, that means sun is going to provide us that. Similarly, we can talk about wind power. We are talking about all these offshore wind farms that we are building up over there. Not to forget, we all go to the waterfront, we enjoy the beach, we do a variety of things. There is scuba diving. And look at that. Marine tourism globally generates huge number of jobs, right? We have to the revenue to the economy. We have concepts called as ecotourism, cruise liners. It is a big industry in the Bay of Bengal. We travel, we go on cruise liners, we go river cruises, right? And not to forget, all this is adding to the rapidly. Now let us look at the sequestration part of it. This is extremely important. We all are, well, we can accuse our own humanity, our own selves, that the amount of carbon dioxide that is produced, whether it be from the industry or the Anthropocene for that matter, or for that matter, human footprint. Now, all this has to go. One, right under the sea, there is something called as sea grass. Now, this is a vegetarian live, living, and 1 acre of seagrass, which is not much when we are talking about large sea areas, absorbs 3,350 kilograms of carbon per year, mitigates carbon dioxide from a car traversing 6,212 kilometers. So, the entire ecosystem services generated by the seagrass, which is again valued, is around 1100,000. Now, you would notice this is one part of the entire carbon absorption, or for that matter, we can call it oceans and seas are a carbon sink. That is, that we continue to produce a huge amount of carbon dioxide. There is a carbonization, and this is the area, the sea is again absorbing it. So, what do the oceans and seas offer us are in terms of what we would call as services being rendered. So, we have good examples now. So far, we have covered. We looked at ports, we looked at shipping, we look at shipbuilding. These are goods and services. Now, yet another example which we don't see, we don't think about, where does all this carbon dioxide go, is now coming from the sea. So, put together what we see and what we don't get to see, there's a huge amount of goods and services being generated by the oceans and seas. Now, we always say, let's go to the sea and get there's a big ocean, lot of fish. I'm afraid that's a misnomer. 90% the big fish are gone. 10% could go in the next 40 years. 75% of fish stocks have been exploited or depleted. 20 million metric tons of bycatch is thrown back. That means what we don't need fish, we throw it back. That means we are killing. Now, all this is happening at sea. As we move ahead in years to come, we need to go for sustainable fisheries. That means fishermen are following destructive practices. They are bottom trawling, damaging the reefs. It takes years for corals to come up, for them to grow. Now, all this is happening at sea. Now, this is also affecting our what we call as blue economy. Not to forget, while we do these are all human induced practices, there is also a fact called the amount of plastic. Now, plastic is going into the oceans and seas. Once it goes into the sea, it affects the food chain. We have now examples and stories to tell us that a huge whale washed ashore. That means it died and it came on the shore. After it was dissected, opened up, they found jerry cans in it, big plastic materials in it. After all, this is all they ingest into it. By the way, we must also be worried about that fish microplastics have entered into the food chain, their food chain, and now have entered our food chain. That means there is now evidence to suggest that plastic has entered into the fish. Also, what we find is huge amount of plastic waste, and that washes ashore. Billions tons of plastic bottle caps, cigarette butts, variety of other things, wrappings, balloons, they all end up into the sea. And when they end up into the sea, they affect the marine life, they affect their food chain, they affect our food chain, and then they create a major disaster. So while we are talking about goods and services, the seas and oceans offer us human-induced carbon part of it, carbon dioxide, the amount we produce, they absorb, but also now they are unable to absorb these destructive materials as the plastic. So turn to this little tablet on the right hand side. Top 10 items collected. Look at the cigarette butts, food wrappers, beverage bottles, bottle caps, straws. You always take, you tell the vendor, no, 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 give me 2 straws because I want to have coconut water out of the fresh coconut, right? Stirrers, grocery bags, beverage bottles, other plastic bags, paper bags, beverage cans. All this is. So what we have done is a human created waste that has deliberately or accidentally been released in a lake with marine litter or marine debris. Now, floating, they all float. And when they come onto the sea, they run from the rivers, from these landscape, and they create huge gyres, what we call as circular motion. They keep collecting, and today they can be as big as islands. Pacific Ocean has got a huge gyre of plastic. In the Indian Ocean, we have a huge gyre. We also have a gyre of plastics in the Bay of Bengal. Now, all this is going to be affecting the ocean economy, or for that matter, we are talking today is blue economy. Now, having said the pluses, the minuses, the virtues, the not so good things about the oceans and seas, what is it that we are talking about? What is the value of all this ocean economy we are talking about? We are told that it could be as high as $24 trillion. Now, we still don't know how much, we have not been able to measure the value being provided in terms of the ecosystem services, which we still not been able to fathom. But some estimates say that the ecosystem services that the oceans and seas provide us could be double the material value that we are aware of or we are told about. So it could be anything about $50 trillion. Although United Nations UNCTAD, that's the agency under it, tells us it's about $24 trillion. But I would assume it can be as high as $50 trillion. Now, if that be the case, that is a huge wealth. Goods and services. Now, let's look at some figures. Now, ocean assets could dwarf the largest sovereign wealth funds. Norway's 893 billion. These are all in billions. And here we are talking about numbers, what we call as trillions. And if you see the purple tablet on the left hand side, the direct output could be 6.7, literally 7 trillion through direct output. Trade transport, we're talking about 5.2 trillion. Productive coastline, 7.8 trillion. Carbon absorption, 4.3. These are all estimates. But ladies and gentlemen, what we are trying to say is that the oceans and seas are a huge resource base. There is a huge wealth bank. And for that, we need to preserve it. And for that matter, we have to harness the oceans and seas in a very, very sustainable manner. Now, if that be the case, we are talking about 24 trillion, or my estimate that ecosystem services, when added, could be about $50 trillion. Let us look at another dimension. After all, we're going to harness this. And the title of my presentation or my talk today is to talk about how do we integrate technology to harness this. And the prefix I must always add is sustainable. That it should be, I should not overexploit it. And if that be the case, what kind of technologies that we are looking at? Now, we are told, you're all familiar with disruptive technologies. I'm not going to, I'll venture that little later. But then we am told that the 12 disruptive technologies, just 12 of them, is as high as US dollar 33 trillion by 2025. Now, if we were to combine this, 24 trillion, my estimate, including services, 50 trillion, 33 trillion coming out of the disruptive technologies. You can well imagine we are talking about a huge figure, literally a huge figure, 100 trillion. And that is now, we will now, these 33 trillion, having disaggregated the 24 trillion that we talk about blue economy. Now, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to now disaggregate this 23 trillion, which we are talking about to be valued by about 2025. Now, many of you are students of Industry 4.0, engineers, electronics, and you all carry with you devices like I do, iPhones to Vivo phones to Oppo phones, and there's a huge variety we all carry with us. Now, where is all this? And it's also fashionable these days to give a number to a certain kind of like Industry 4.0. Let's look at it. If we were to look at the timelines, right on top row, we're talking about, so if that was society 1.0, it was a hunter society. Society, we call it 2.0. Let's call the industrial society 3.0. We have transitioned now from information society, which started in the late 1950s, the 60s, to society 4.0. And now we are talking about society 5.0, that we're talking about smart society. We are already talking about smart cities. So we ourselves are talking about smart societies, smart humans, smart students, smart colleges, smart universities, faculties. And of course, we are now marshalling in smart technology to converse with each other as we do right now. Similarly, with the society, transformation was happening. And we talked about Industry 1.0. Go back to your school days. We were all taught about industrial revolution in Europe. We talked about mechanization, the steam power, that was 1.0. Industry 2.0, mass production and electricity comes in. Industry 3.0, electronics, ICT, and automation, you're all familiar with. We are into Industry 4.0, and we're talking about digitalization and cyber physical systems. We are also now transitioning to Industry 5.0. We are talking about cognitive computing. Now, what is all this we are talking about? AI, machine learning, wireless technology, 5G, I'm told, and I've seen those reports come out of China, they are working already on 6G. We are talking about wearable technologies. After all, we carry those smart watches. There are variety. These are all rudimentary at the rock bottom, but there are very, very sophisticated wearable technologies. We will be talking about digital twinning, a picture I will show you, quantum communication, fiber optic cables that you're all familiar with. After all, 90% of the data that is carried or transported or shared or transmitted comes through the fiber optic cables, and these fiber optic cables all run under the sea, underwater. So they have a direct relevance to the blue economy. Now we are talking about kirigami, origami, warigami. Kirigami and origami are Japanese art of paper cutting and paper folding. And if you put those, we are now miniaturizing everything. And then on a smartwatch, we're carrying so much of data, microchips, microchips we are talking about. We are now talking about cyber warfare, which is now AI enabled. That means I cannot be all the time smart. So there is also another smarter person or a smarter state or a smarter country which uses artificial intelligence to create cyber attacks. Blockchain you're familiar with. We're talking about data storages. Every time you watch a movie, oh, so many MBs gone. So much of data. Where is all this going? It is not on land. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, data is stored in big data storages and they generate heat. And when they generate heat, that can be problematic. So we are now looking towards the oceans and seas to put our data storage boxes down below. We are also in the process of biomimetics. That is, we are now copying fish, we are copying sharks, we are copying whales, all these big things to understand the society, what is going on underwater. And lastly, I must mention about singularity. There is a fear that one day machines will become smarter than the humans. And when that crosses, that means we'll become irrelevant. We don't want to give away that power. So there is this notion called 2045 when all machines will be smarter than humans, and that's where the challenge will come in. We'll talk about all these issues a little later. With all this, what was happening at sea or the oceans and seas? The ships were made of sail, they would move by the sails, wooden hull. Ship 2.0 came in steam power, iron hull. We talked about diesel power, we use that. We are now talking about ship 4.0. Autopilot, GPS, which you carry on your devices, engine room automation. So ship 4.0 is very much what is prevalent these days. We are now moving towards autonomous ships, where we are giving them labels as ship 5.0, 6.0, 7.0. Now, that is the kind of automation which is going to be coming in. That means we'll see that in the port of Paradip, that we will find one day a autonomous ship has come in. There is nobody on board. It is just doing its job, removing containers, picking up containers, and deciding to return. They're not deciding and being marshaled or being guided in terms of giving instructions. Now you leave the port. So that is the shape of things to come. I mentioned to you about digital twinning. So we are already into a virtual ship. I can monitor the entire ship, autonomous ship sitting on the shore. Similarly, I can monitor the entire oil rig, which is offshore. So this is the kind of technologies industry 4.0, 5.0 moving in. But then while this was going on, what was happening to the fuel? We used to have wind power. We moved to the coal power. We are using oil, diesel. We are now moving LNG, oil. We are talking about hydrogen. We are talking about biofuel. And now, very interesting, ladies and gentlemen, we are going back. Smart ships will carry sails, which are AI enabled sails, and they will sail the oceans. And that is what is coming. Is it coming back to square one? Fuel 1.0, back to fuel 1.0. Well, but the current fuel 1.0 is again AI enabled. So this is the kind of transformation which is happening on the ships, or for that matter, in the maritime world. Even warfare is changing. Earlier, the warfare used to be with boats clashing against each other. You can clash, and we came in for another warfare where big ships made of iron were clashing with each other. Now we are in the last row. If you see, we are talking about an advanced set of naval warfare. So we moved from platform to network, now to autonomous warfare. The picture that you see right at the bottom row, extreme right, is an autonomous ship. It sails through from the west coast of United States all the way to Hawaii and Guam autonomously and is meant for warfare. So again, from oars, you come to what we would call as autonomous ships. This is the transition and transformation. Even our binoculars have changed. What we would use, you see the first picture, the captain of the ship would have a huge steering wheel and the big kind of a box that you see in front that used to be his magnetic compass. He would use a telescope. From telescope, he moved to binocular. And now we are looking at the entire maritime domain through digital screens. The second row, if you see, that is Lord Nelson sharing with his commanders, that means warships, captains of the warships, how he's going to fight the warfare. And you see the picture in the middle row towards the right, and you see that is AI enabled or absolutely network systems. So augmented reality enabled 3D commanders tables have come. Warfare, bottom line, warfare, a cannon. Now you can see the person sitting right around him, instruments. And the last picture, there is this bot which is going to tell you what to do and what not to do. This is the kind of transformation. So we are talking about from telescopes to binoculars to artificial enabled captains. So in this entire blue economy, the ocean space we are talking about, right? This is driven by 5 V's, which I'll talk about. How this is changing. Just to give you a panoramic view, what you see here is the surface, the subsurface, the underwater domain. There is so much happening in the oceans and seas. And there are now, I would call as the 4IR technologies cannot be divorced from blue economy. Or blue economy is dependent on Industry 4.0 technology if we have to harness and marshal in the wealth of the oceans, mind you, in a sustainable manner. Now, the data which is coming in, this is the 5 V's we are talking about. volume. We're talking about zettabytes of data, variety of data, unstructured, structured, the value of this data, veracity and velocity, the speed. All this is now because we are talking about space, we're talking about the surface, we're talking about the underwater. Each one of these is generating huge amount of data and human mind cannot digest this. Or for that matter, is still not yet able to extract a knowledgeable functional data which we can do it. So industry 4.0 has to now further gear up to meet up the amount of information that each of the devices, the sensors that we are going to put up in each of what we are doing or what kind of activity or whatever kind of activity we do at sea. Now, a lot of things are there. If you disaggregate once again the blue economy, living resources, fisheries, aquaculture, if you look at it, the new industries, that is column number 5, multiple species aquaculture, renewable energy, desalination, extremely important subject, right? We're talking about blue technology, R&D, sequestration. We will also talk about, if you see column 4, right at the bottom, I put remediation and restoration. I want you to on that, but right on top, deep sea mining, the entire energy transition that we are talking about, lithium. There was a big noise about lithium having been found in Jammu and Kashmir area, right? But we still need, if we have to go for renewable energies, the entire battery system, they all require critical materials which are now found on the seabed. Now, what is this whole industry we are talking about? Where does all this fit in? Manufacturing of sensors, instruments, platforms. We're talking about organizations that develop and maintain data sets, data tools, software tools, building, deploying, and operating observing systems, compliance industry, which technologies we need, desalination I talked about, data infrastructure I talked about. So what blue economy, what we would understand, say half a dozen of the sectors, if you recall my first slide, that there are some of the sectors that I talked about, but you can see now each of the sectors has got multiple subsectors, and now they have to be married to the disruptive technologies. Blue biotechnology. Field is yet ill-defined and poorly regulated. Risk of unintended extraction of marine species associated with blue biotechnologies. We need to be very, very careful what we want to get out of the seas. Can't be just that you pick up whatever you want. You will create a catastrophic situation. Besides being sustainable, we also need to be very, very precautionary in our approach of what we are doing at sea. Any changes, any tampering or tinkering with the ocean ecosystem is going to create major catastrophic kind of disaster for the humankind. And this is now, if you just with the fear, we are all mediation, restoration. Some businesses make money out of ecosystem services. Some make money by restoring ecosystem services, which is remediation. Now, humans have destroyed indiscriminately coral reefs. Now it's a big industry, how to regenerate or regrow corals. It takes thousands of years for them, all these blue, green, yellow, orange, fancy looking colors, very pretty looking colors of coral reefs. They have been destroyed. But now the process is on remediation, how to rework on this. So we are, and this is not just classic engineering or electronics. There is much more ecosystem services that are coming in. So all these are going to be creating. So if you really now look at it, there is blue economy. We're talking about the industry 4.0 technologies. We're talking about restoration. We're talking about blue biotechnology. You have a huge gamut of opportunity what the oceans and the seas offer us. So as we move further towards the end of my lecture, and I'm going to spend more time answering your questions after I finish, this is where as truth you have to look at it. Now, blue economy is going to be entrepreneur driven. innovation driven. Skill development will be needed. That will generate jobs. Now, if you really look at it, it's a mix of technology, economy, and environment. And you always have something for you, whichever it's a gold mine, you touch it and you're going to be finding gold there. As students, look at technology, look at finance, look at business. Those of you who follow environmental studies, look at this domain, you have such great opportunities. There's all jobs. But what you have to be extremely important is innovative, absolutely brilliant in terms of how you're going to bring in new ideas into it. Entrepreneurs, MSMEs. So there is lots for each one of us over there. If we want to look at market key numbers, again, this is where the market is, where you're going to find jobs. You've chosen this university, you've come to the university to learn up and make careers for themselves. Well, ladies and gentlemen, marine biotechnology market itself is growing at the rate of about 6.8. There is $2.5 trillion maritime ecosystems. You have a jobs there. Each dollar invested in marine protected areas yields a return of around $20. Now, these numbers, you can well imagine that this is where you have a lot to get into and extract for yourself what is good for you. Build your capacities and capabilities. We are looking for innovators. We look at blue growth entrepreneurs with disruptive business ideas. Blue labs, I'm sure your university should be able to create blue labs. We will generate blue careers for you. Blue technology will be coming. And what you have to do as students, looking at blue economy and looking at the entire industry 4.0, 5.0 as it unfolds, you have to challenge industry assumptions, find solutions to critical blue economy issues, create new, harness the economic potential of the oceans, create jobs and values for the coastal and island communities. Now, there is a social responsibility also that you have with you. So, let me conclude my talk today. Is it possible? And I'll encourage the university, and I feel privileged to have I have to present this, my talk, in the presence of Honorable Vice Chancellor. Sir, can we introduce blue economy as part of the academic curriculum? It is part of the national agenda. Can we curate a blue economy industry 4.0 course under the CBCS, under the new education policy? And we have multidisciplinary. It is not just sciences, it is not just technology, it is not just biotechnology, social sciences. Everybody's has something or the other into it. Let's look for research projects. Can we talk about Odisha's Blue Economy Atlas? It is not there. We peg states in terms of the GDP, but we never measure what is the value of Odisha's economy, which it draws from the oceans and seas. Innovation centers. We need to look at partnership with the industry. All this has to be coming in. And this is a great opportunity for your university now to spearhead and lead as far as blue economy is concerned, which is the national agenda. Finally, let me share with you, this is at the cost of marketing my two books on blue economy, and the third book on blue industry 4.0 technologies. I think that should encourage you all. Please read it. And thank you very much for your attention. I'll be happy to answer your question. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your very information-packed, overall comprehensive presentation of the entire gamut of blue economy. So actually, in many of our discussions with Professor Sakhua, we have been discussing all these things. And I will initiate the questions because just now I have come from Vietnam. And I will just ask you one question, sir. We have got 7,300 kilometers of long coastal line. Even Odisha has 450 kilometers of coastal line. Vietnam has 3,200 kilometers of coastal line. But in a very small city like Nha Trang, they have got more than 25 five-star hotels. And they have build those hotels in such a way that after the sea there is a half-kilometer growing green corridor, and after there are 4-lane roads, and on this side there are hotels. So my point is that, as you have mentioned, for the last 100 years, I was looking at your data, 1850 to 1950, we have got 3.2% growth. And from 1950 to 2022, for the 72 years, there is again that the same 3.2% growth. So somehow I think that we have not grown because the growth rate is same 3.2%. Okay. So my point is that why India doesn't have a comprehensive ocean strategy, both in terms of maritime securities and also from an economic point of view. Kindly highlight on these 2 points.
First, let me talk about that 3.2% growth rate. The idea is to showcase to you that it is a growth industry. That means that shipping will continue, shipbuilding will continue, ports will continue. That means they will continue to grow at this rate or small, lesser or higher, but there is a sustained growth. That means the ocean economy is a sustained growth. This is not going away. Its industry is not perishing. For that matter, we've talked about the wooden boats to contemporary times in terms of autonomous ships. There's a growth pattern which is going on. That means the trade has grown a large volume and in terms of over the period. So it is sustainable, barring two instances in 2008 during the financial crisis when we found that the growth rate had come down. And now again, during the pandemic, our maritime output in terms of shipping had come down because of the pandemic. But it has got enough resilience that it continues to grow. Now, coming back to in our case about India, I think we've been victims of what we as maritime, especially as we call as maritime blindness. We have a glorious past. Odisha has a glorious past. Shipping were part and parcel of it. Your cultural connections by the sea route, right, into Southeast Asia. Trading was a very, very important function that was going on, and you were using the seas. But today, what has happened is that over the years, the maritime world probably took a back seat because we were looking more towards continent, because our threats came from the mountains. That's where we, if you see post-independence, we fought wars, except for the 1971 war, where the Navy played a limited role. Rest of the wars have been fought on land. And matter, it is, as we would normally accuse of, out of sight, out of mind. Sea is out of sight, out of mind. We don't know what's there. And now with the technology coming in, we know what is the wealth of the ocean. Science is contributing, and we would notice that is the next venture to go to. But the key word is sustainable development of resources. So here again, that is what my suggestion is, that can your university take the lead, build up a huge maritime curriculum so that it fits into everything. And today, any let's say department or sub-department of your university, you would notice that there is an element of sea. And after all, Odisha is a coastal state, huge maritime tradition, huge maritime industry, and that is where we need to bring in sea awareness. And that is where technology comes in. That is where so information comes in. That is where familiarization comes in. Coastal communities come in. We all are dependent on the sea. That realization has now come to us. So we have an opportunity not only to build in terms of economic and wealth, economic value and wealth, but also in terms of maintaining the entire ecosystem of which we become part and parcel of it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And as to your suggestion to have a center of excellence as far as that integrated maritime studies is concerned, already we are progressing in that direction. And we with the cooperation of the Ministry of Culture, we had a very successful Dhara conference on the maritime traditions in Odisha, in the maritime museum on the banks of river Mahanadi during this Bali Jatra, just reminding to 2,500 glorious years, the past glory of our maritime tradition. So definitely we'll be considering, and I will be requesting, because in that direction, this is probably the first thing, and you have you are the first person to deliver the inaugural lecture on that time, because this will be the annual theme of this integrated maritime studies. And after 4 or 5 lectures, definitely I will be considering seriously to have a 1 day or 2 days national seminar, so that we can chalk out the plan and we can start a center. That is definitely there at my mind. And 1 or 2 questions before, very rightly, actually, Professor Sakhua has named is harnessing, and he has always emphasized on that sustainability. That is very, very important. At the end of the day, if the world is not there, all kinds of trillions or 100 trillions is meaningless, is useless. So sustainability, non-violence, justice, and respect. So whatever we are going to harness the oceans, all these 4 terms must not be forgotten, otherwise you will be lost. Now, 1 or 2 just basic questions before I will ask anybody to ask any questions to Professor Sakhua. Is there a center of gyres in Bay of Bengal that you have mentioned? Is it there? And where, how far it is from, or where is the location?
We are told that there is a small little gyre which has now been built up in the Bay of Bengal. Now, this is all centered towards North Bay of Bengal. Essentially, the drainage coming from Bangladesh, India, right, as also from Myanmar and some of the rivers which are, say, coast of, from West Bengal, of course, we get it, also from the Mahanadi River. But I don't have the exact location to tell you, but we do have a gyre which is small forming up, but there's a big gyre which is in the Indian Ocean. As I mentioned about the Pacific, there is already gyre which is forming up in the Arabian Sea. My other worry is that the oceans are warming. Now, there is a oxygen depletion patch also in the Bay of Bengal. That means the ecosystem is getting disturbed. Now, less oxygen, that means the entire ecosystem, marine life is going to be affected. There's another worry that we have about Bay of Bengal. While we talk about, we know a lot about Bay of Bengal, we always say, but we tend to forget what is underwater, the temperature part of it, that we are forgetting. So worry is about gyre. There is a worry of lack of oxygen depletion zone, which is there. These are 2 major worries as far as I'm concerned.
And another just last questions, because I have written 1 acre of sea grass. Will it fetch INR? You have just you have mentioned it in INR. So 11 lakhs INR. Am I correct?
Yes. Now, seagrass is something that we must understand. Now, give you an example how one country, particularly I want to mention about, is Indonesia. They are blessed with huge amount of seagrass. They've taken it more both in terms as a food chain, but as also for the purpose of carbon sequestration. Mangroves, they are archipelagic state. They need all these things for the purpose of maintaining their so-called eco services and eco balance.
Oh, probably
seagrass is extremely important.
Okay. Probably that's why I've seen while I had been to Denpasar, Bali. I saw these are floating seagrasses on the surface of the oceans, isn't it?
No. This is on the seabed.
On the seabed.
Underwater. Yes.
Oh, okay. Underwater. Okay. Thank you very much for answering my curiosity and many important questions. Now I will ask the audience to, if you have got any questions, you can ask, please. I think probably if you are listening to him very rapidly, then a lot of questions, because I don't want to take all the time in asking questions, though I have got another one important. Kirigami, origami, I understand, but what is this warigami?
Origami is again the art of using the kirigami and the origami in terms of naval warfare. How do we miniaturize this? That means I can pack, let's say, a robot. I can carry it. I can carry a UAV. You can have a huge UAV. I can collapse it to read, just to put it in my pocket, and launch it for whatever operations I need.
Oh, I see. Okay, so any questions from anybody? If you don't have any questions, then I will thank the speaker for the illuminating thing because it is very much close to my heart. I am very, very passionate about this thing. So, because we have already chalked out 4 speakers, and gradually we'll be bringing speakers so that all the themes on these integrated maritime studies can be covered in 1 year. And definitely we will have a, I will be talking to Professor Sakuja, how can we have a national seminar of 2 days at least, or initially at least he can come down to the university for a little amount of guidance and all these things. So I am extremely thankful to Professor Sakuja for this illuminating talk. And on behalf of the outreach cell of the university and the university itself, I am extending a warm gratitude to you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.